Hey, hey, welcome to Your Best Podcast. I'm your host and your best life coach, Teemaree. Today, we're going to get into easier ways to heal. Easier ways to heal. I mean, man, this topic really hits hard for me because of a number of reasons. I personally have gone through some things that really shook up my beliefs around healing and health in our medical industry, at least in the United States. And I also have loved ones, loved ones that have now passed on that have experienced really terrible things, sicknesses, things that lasted a really long time. And as they were going through those things, it was really challenging to see their thinking around healing, their blind faith in our medical system or in things that they had heard from doctors or nurses. There's even people that I love today that, I feel that they're relying too heavily on pharmaceuticals and other things that are commonplace for us, but aren't really the best practice. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I mean, there are easier ways to heal. So our normal here in the United States of America, and it has changed over the course of my lifetime. So I remember as a kid, never ever seeing commercials for medicines, like never. And we really would have to go to the doctor and hear from the doctor what they recommended treatments should be. There were no pharmaceutical commercials or advertisements or marketing directly to the consumer, directly to us, the people. And now we see ads all the time for pharmaceutical companies and for their products. So whether it's ointments, pills, drops, inhalers, whatever it is, but there's a lot of ads out there for medications. Sometimes the medications are geared toward things that are chronic diseases. And sometimes now the medications are around just things we don't like, right? Things we don't like, things we wish were better. And that's really tough to see because a lot of the times it seems like these medications and these pharmaceutical companies, either they're getting passed along and like given privilege to go to the market really early, or they're being allowed to bring their products to the market with long lists of side effects. That it's like sometimes, man, I know we've seen a lot of comedians comment on this and like we all joke and play, but it's like sometimes I'm like, dang, like those side effects are worse than the original condition. And I don't know, it seems like a really big gamble to be taking. So, when we're looking at the norm, right? It started off for me personally, I was like looking at the norm just as a person, right? So it's just kind of like noticing, hey, like there's a lot of these commercials, and then like a few comedians commented on it. And it was like, yeah, that's actually funny because it's true. Like, oh my gosh, And then now, like through family members, like I said at the top, and just kind of like even my own experience where maybe something comes up in life, right? And I go to the doctor, and the first thing the doctor wants to do is give me a prescription. And that really started to open my eyes to something else. There has to be something else. Okay, there has to be something else. So our norm here in the United States, if you haven't been paying attention, or if it just hasn't really kind of like been something you needed to take in, it's really geared now toward doctors oftentimes either claim they don't have the time, or they don't make the time, or they don't have the custom anymore to spend a lot of time with patients. So even the time spent with the doctor is a lot shorter than it might have been in the past. And now the protocol quickly leads to a medicine, a pharmaceutical, a pill, a potion, a drug that can be taken instead of trying to change the patient's habits. And that norm is something we need to be really clear about, because just because something is normal doesn't mean it's right. Just because something is normal doesn't mean it's the best. Woohoo! Okay, like straight up. Like, when we should get excited about that realization, because if we think that things are right and good and appropriate and honest and real because they're normal, then we, especially in this day and age, we run a very high risk of being duped, swindled, taken, and really just having a bad experience, no matter what industry we're talking about. What is normal isn't necessarily right. And what's happening in the healing and health and like just medical industry is the normal now isn't necessarily the best way to go. So it's like what it can do, right? What it can do when we believe this is that it can keep us away from even trying anything else. So some of the older generations that have been in my life, they were still, they came up at a time where they could really trust doctors. They came up at a time where they really did just like, they let themselves be led by doctors, nurses, and stuff like that. And it was okay. But now as the industry has changed and the habits of doctors and the pace at which they move and what is now the next step, which it's usually drugs or some sort of prescription, now I think we've entered in an era where we need to be more careful and we need to be more open and we need to be more questioning. We need to do a lot more questioning and we need to have a wider perspective as to what we want to do. And we need to work with our doctors. We need to work with doctors and we need to work with the information we're given and not just accept it. That's just what I believe. I think that, and that's what I've seen for myself in my own life. And that's what I've seen get in the way with my loved ones who eventually just had a really bad time before they died. And even what I see with my clients, when my clients come to me for health coaching and health and wellness coaching, when folks are really just, their perspective is, hey, the doctor said this, so that's what it should be, then a lot of times there seem to be problems. So we need to have an open perspective. And at least that's what I have found to be an easier way to heal. So it starts off an easier way to heal. The very first thing is to have an open perspective around what you're willing to take in regards to your health and your healing. You need to have an open perspective and not just totally feel like you need to follow the doctor like back in the day. I think that's a good place to start, because then if you have an open perspective, you're going to be able to at least maybe do some research. Maybe you're going to question your doctor, ask them why, what brings them to that conclusion, or how long they expect for you to do a treatment or take this medication, if there's any side effects to the medication or things you may not want. Some medications these days, you start taking them and you can't stop taking them. You can't just stop taking them. These are important facts to know that not everybody is going to tell you. And so like having that open perspective and not just the blind faith when it comes to the medical industry of today's day and age is important. And it starts the path to discovering easier ways to heal. The government, our medical industry, the mainstream providers, they have to just catch up. They have to catch up. At least here in the United States. I can't speak to internationally because I do see a lot of really wonderful things happening in Europe and in Australia where they just are way ahead around health, healing, what they allow, what they don't allow, what they pass for the people, etc. But at least here in the United States, I think we're at a critical point where having that openness and being able to question is key, not just following blindly. And we need to be willing to try new methods. Okay. We need to be willing to try new methods. In episode 5, we talked about a new method, right? A new path to healing, right? So there are so many paths to healing. I personally have had really, really great results with different holistic methods. And when I say holistic methods, like what that means to me and how I bring that to my clients is I like to suggest things that are not pharmaceutical based, that they deal with nature, that you can't overdose on, that you won't become addicted to, that are going to work with the nature of the body and the nature of our chemistry. And so those things are really, really great. Some of the things I've personally like literally healed from, like massage has healed me. So massage has healed me in a number of ways, and that is a holistic, method. I've also definitely through paths with nature, like using food, herbs, things like that, being able to eliminate symptoms that I had that when I took them to the doctor, they wanted to give me a pharmaceutical. And they often told me, and that's just the way it is now. I feel that nowadays, a lot of different doctors will say, that's just what happens as you get older. And that is such BS. I do not subscribe to that at all. I think that we are intelligently and wonderfully made. I think that our bodies, they take a lot of abuse and still keep going. And I think if we treated them right and if we start to listen to our bodies, I've seen it with myself and my clients that we can find easier ways to heal. So being willing to try new methods is another way to start to open up the path to find easier ways to heal. I'm not telling you to ignore your doctor. I'm not telling you to ignore your labs. I'm not telling you to do things like this, but I am saying that what I found for myself and my clients is that having that openness to ask questions and to start doing some research really opens up to a lot of learning and a lot of possibilities. And then having that opening to say, hey, what if I started to do this to try to help what I'm experiencing heal, help my body heal, help these symptoms go away? It's really a magical thing that happens. So, when I personally did with massage, what had happened for me is at some point I got like a pinched nerve or something in my shoulder. And that already started off really uncomfortable. It was like that kind of, it was an ongoing pain that also felt like if I was going to make any kind of move, it was immediately going to be like really bad. I don't know if you've ever had that experience before with any kind of like pinched nerve or like where you feel a knot in a muscle and you feel like it already hurts and feels weird. But if you move it a little way, you might be frozen or it's going to be a sharp pain. It was that kind of sensation. And I remember reaching into the fridge to get our pitcher of water because we always have filtered water in the house. And I remember getting the pitcher with my right hand and feeling like it was weaker. And then I got scared because I'm right predominant. I am ambidextrous, so I can use both hands for a number of functions, but my right is my dominant hand. And I was like, there's no way that I can't pick up this water pitcher. So then I got scared. And I remember like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like, what is going on? I remember going to a doctor. I went to an orthopedic doctor to check me out. And like his whole thing was like, yeah, it's probably a pinched nerve. You're going to need like all these other treatments. And maybe we could do like a shot. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this seems like a lot. This seems like a lot of complicated and expensive ongoing treatments. And he can't explain to me what's wrong. He can't explain to me why, and he can't explain to me that he can't tell me this will go away. So that was my first like, wait a second, just pause, right? And I would like to share that with you. Again, look, I am not a medical professional. I am not a doctor. I'm not a nurse, but I am a human being that has used these methods and it has helped me. So you need to take for yourself what is going to work for you. And, this is informational purposes only. But I can tell you that, when I listened to the doctor at the time with that pain, but just had that pause, I thought, wait a second. Something doesn't feel right. Now I know this doctor is like really, really, he was in like a top orthopedic spot, in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles County, California. He had all the certifications, he's a respected doctor. But his protocol just didn't seem right for me. There was something that I was like, wait a second, this seems, number one, way more complicated. Number two, it's really expensive. Number three, there's no guarantee of anything. And he can't even tell me what exactly is wrong. So that for me, look, it is always an issue for me. Even if you were to come and say, hey, let me help you with your computer. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like, what are we going to do? And you're like, well, I'm not really sure. I would have a problem with that, right? I would have a problem with that. You have no plan. Or if you're like, well, I don't know what's wrong with it, but let's just try to figure it out. Well, I might be willing to let you figure it out with me, but most likely, like, especially in the case of my health and my shoulder, what was happening at the time, I was like, this doesn't feel right. This just didn't feel right. So I paused. Then I had an open mind to look for more. Okay. Because here's another tip that I'm going to give you is that, you may not know this, but in the Western medical industry, each doctor is a specialist in just the tiniest little lane. And so what will happen is you may go to a certain doctor, but their advice for you is just based on their bandwidth of knowing. And that might seem very obvious, but the reason why it's actually a greater understanding that is important for us to know is that that's also why you can't have blind faith in the doctor. They may know about like the shoulder and orthopedic stuff, but that's just that. They might not know about the muscle relation, or they might not know about, it's crazy because you'd think they would because it's all in that same area, but they don't, right? So having that openness, asking questions, I started to kind of like, man, what else could I try? So there was acupuncture that I could try, and there was massage, and there was chiropractic that I kind of had known about. Each have different modalities. My shoulder and my situation had already felt real delicate. I did not want to try to go and crack it into place. Like I was not even feeling all of that because, like I said, it felt very fragile. So acupuncture, even though I had heard about it and I feel like that could yield some good results, I didn't know of, an acupuncturist near me. And, then that, like finding a specialist that you really connect with and you trust, I was like, I need to get this taken care of. So I went to the massage therapist and I told them what was going on. And they're like, okay, let's do this. And the massage therapist gave me this deep tissue massage, not just in the shoulder. That's another thing. The doctor will look to where you say the complaint is, right? Newsflash, in my case, and in many cases, but in my case specifically, because that's what we're talking about here, my shoulder, maybe the doctor's looking just on my shoulder, right? Well, the massage therapist understood that I have like nerves and tendons and muscles that might start all the way down my back that could be causing that pull, that could be causing that tension and that discomfort. Woohoo! Woohoo! Indeed. Because that piece of information unlocked everything, right? If we go to the wrong person, if we have like this blind faith, we're going to miss easier paths to healing, easier ways to heal, right? So I could have just said, okay, doc, that's what you say. Let's go for it. Let's do the shots. Let's do a surgery. Let's go ahead and, freeze it. Let's do all these things. It's costing me a ton of money. I'm having to go back and back again. Let's see if this works. But lo and behold, there's a much easier path. In my case, I go to the massage therapist, and yes, the massage was a combination of we're working through it because it was deep tissue. So it wasn't just me laying there, but it was also just me laying there. It wasn't me going through invasive surgeries or, shots. And now, oh, the relief, and then regaining that strength. And that feeling went away, that panic of like, oh my gosh, if I just move it 1 millimeter, it's going to turn into a sharp pain or freeze. All these things brought such a relief to my mind and my body. And it healed. I went to see that masseuse many, many times after that, because then I just had a deep trust. I knew that she knew what she was doing. And she was always able to just work with my body. She was able to feel my body, my back, my shoulders, whatever muscle, and say, okay, let's work this out. I feel that you're tense here. We can loosen this up, etc. It was amazing. No side effects, no addictions, no nothing. Okay. These are the easier ways to heal. We have ways to heal through nature. We have ways to heal through nurture. I had a client, and she was really having a lot of different experiences. She had high blood pressure. She had a lot of ailments. She would be going to the emergency room often with different kinds of complaints. She also had an addiction to soda. She had like a lot of things going on. She had high pressure work. And so she had a lot of things going on, so stress can do a number, sugar can do a number. And she wanted to lower her blood pressure. She wanted to lose weight. She wanted to increase her energy in a better way. She wanted to eat healthier. And so, the doctor, she was on blood pressure medications, and she was doing all of that. And I could see how that is important, right? If your number gets to a certain level, you got to take care of that, man. You can't be riding day after day. You can't be riding your system with high blood pressure. That's not healthy. That's not good. But in working with her, okay, then it was like, yeah, let's cut down on that soda. Yeah, let's process this stress in a different way. Yeah, let's stay motivated to move our bodies in a healthy way. Now, you may say, I know all these things, but guess what? Knowing them and doing them are universes apart. Okay. I also know that if I work out, I'm going to have a good looking body and I'm going to feel strong. But guess what, honey? Unless I get my buns down into that gym, the good body ain't coming. The good mental state isn't going to be had. That's just reality, right? So in working with her, it was really exciting because she was able to, she didn't believe that she could stop drinking soda. She would drink multiple cans a day. Okay, that's a lot of sugar, which adds to a lot of weight, which adds to a lot of up, which we may think is nice, but can also feel like stress and anxiety, etc. when it's too much. And so now the relief of like, hey, I'm not addicted to soda. I don't have to have that. The relief of like, oh, wow, now I'm not jacked up. I'm not jacked up and anxious and like, okay, I can exist in a more even keel way. The feeling of like, wow, weight is coming off. Wow, I am looking better. Wow, I can do this. So it feels really, really good. It feels really good. And that gets me excited because I think about my grandparents who I loved so much, so much. And it was so hard to see them get sick and so hard to see them suffer. It is so hard to see people that you love suffer for any period of time. So to see anyone that we love suffer for extended periods of time is heartbreaking. Then there's the finances of it. Then there's the stress of having to book doctors and nurses that have crazy schedules now. And like I said, they spend a little bit of time and it's hard. And they need to know first if your insurance will cover. Otherwise, they ain't seeing you. And oh, yeah, you do need the specialist for this next thing, but we have to work it out with insurance first. So you might have to wait twice or 3 times as long as you should because your actual health needs you to be seen right away. But hey, it's just part of the process. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And especially with, like I said, what is our norm right now? So our norm in the United States right now, our norm is not really high quality food, you know? Look, if you shop at Whole Foods, if you shop only organic, if you don't eat, if you make all your own recipes, this isn't you. But most of the people are not living that way. Most of us are not living that way. Most of us are just shopping for regular foods at regular stores. We're getting stuff off the shelf. We're getting stuff off of the, produce piles. And like, it's just not the best. Right? So we have a lot of things coming at us. A lot of us are busy. We don't have the time to like make our own sauces and only shop organic and, do all these things that, would be grand, So what happens? Our norm isn't set up for us to thrive. And then something goes wrong. We go to the doctor and the norm of the way to process patients isn't like, what's really going on with your whole system? What holistic way can we help you to change this? It's, what is it? Oh yeah, I know what that is. Okay, why don't you go ahead and take this to your nearest pharmacy? So there are easier ways to heal. What are some of them? We have easier ways through what we eat. We have easier ways to heal through what we eat. We can use our food as something that lifts our life up and lifts our health up and energizes us and fuels us in a good way. Or the food we can be eating can be poisoning us. It can be hurting us. It can be leading us to states that we don't want to be. Overweight, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, things like this. An easier way to heal is through what we eat, through what we drink. An easier way to heal is using modalities that are working with us that are not pharmaceutical based. So things like massage is something I can definitely recommend. Things like yoga is something I can definitely recommend. Things that, exercise of any kind, movement of any kind, I can recommend. Mindfulness, breathing techniques, I can recommend. There are others, but as we know, again, usually the things that are really good for us and don't have side effects and don't deal with pharmaceutical companies are actually, we're not allowed to talk about because we're not allowed to give medical advice. And they say, well, the FDA doesn't approve that, but that has to do a lot with the politics around the industry and less about what's good for people. So easier ways to heal is just finding ways through what we eat and drink, finding methods to strengthen ourselves, exercise, to walk, to be nurtured through massage, things like that, through yoga, through mindful breathing. And that can help us in various ways. Flexibility, strength, mental, emotional is wonderful, wonderful. There are easier ways to heal. And there are easier ways to heal with different modalities and techniques like the one we spoke about in the last episode, where we can now start to use different things to help us, right? Sometimes it's machinery that does wonderful things. Sometimes it's a practitioner. Sometimes it's a health coach, right? A health and wellness coach. But these things are available. They are available to us and they help us to find easier ways to heal that will give us those benefits that we want, that will feel good, that will nurture us, that will not have negative side effects. Okay? Woohoo! And that we love. Listen, I will never tell you to go against medical advice. That isn't right. But I will tell you to be encouraged in knowing that your body can heal. You can heal. There are easier ways to heal. There are many ways to heal. If you are currently worried about your health, be encouraged, be open, do research, reach out and get help. You are worth it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe and visit teemaree.com/free for more goodness. Woohoo!